Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're taking a closer look at Cabernet Sauvignon.
Always a good choice.
Our listener wants to explore Cabernet Sauvignon from two legendary regions, Bordeaux and California.
Ah, a classic face-off.
Right. We've got some great research to guide us, including parts of Cabernet Sauvignon, California versus Bordeaux. So, ready to jump in?
Absolutely. This is going to be interesting, especially since this whole duel between Bordeaux and California, well, it involves a grape with a surprisingly short history.
Oh, I always thought Cabernet Sauvignon had been around forever. What's the story?
It's actually relatively young in the world of wine.
Huh.
Cabernet Sauvignon emerged only in the 17th century in, of all places, Bordeaux.
No way.
It was a happy accident. Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc vines cross-pollinated.
Wow. Two very different grapes, creating one of the most celebrated reds.
It's amazing how that happens, isn't it?
It makes you wonder if anyone tried to replicate it.
I'm sure they did, but there's something special about that first accidental crossing in Bordeaux. And of course, the climate and soil there turned out to be perfect for this new grape.
Speaking of Bordeaux, I've always been fascinated by it.
It's a special place.
All those Grand Chateaux,
Centuries of winemaking tradition.
the prestige,
It's almost intimidating.
almost. So what's important to know about Bordeaux as we start comparing its Cabernet Sauvignon to California's?
Well, Bordeaux has a long and storied past, going all the way back to the Romans. They were the first to plant vines there, but the English were the ones who really put Bordeaux wines on the map.
Because of their love of those big Bordeaux reds.
Exactly. They developed this deep appreciation for the Cabernet Sauvignon dominant blends. Structured, age-worthy. Those became the wines Bordeaux was famous for.
And then there's the 1855 classification, right? Still a huge deal, even though it's based on 19th century economics.
It's incredible how much influence it still holds. Basically, Emperor Napoleon III wanted to showcase the best of Bordeaux at the Paris World's Fair, so he commissioned this ranking system for the top wines.
So it was all about showing off.
Well, yeah, but it was based on reputation and the market prices at the time. It created this hierarchy that continues to impact pricing and prestige today.
Makes you think about the wines that might be overlooked just because they don't have that historical clout. But okay, let's get into the actual region itself.
Right, when we talk Cabernet Sauvignon in Bordeaux, terroir is everything. Soil, climate, human practices. It all comes together to create the wine's unique character.
And Bordeaux has a bunch of different subregions, each with its own style, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with the Médoc over on the left bank of the Gironde. Gravelly soils, perfect for powerful, tannic Cabernet Sauvignon blends. Think aromas of cedar, tobacco, even this distinct minerality some describe as pencil lead.
Pencil lead, that's a new one.
You'll know it when you smell it. It develops as the wine ages. Then there's Graves, also on the left bank, known for both reds and whites. Their Cabernet Sauvignon blends are often a bit softer, more elegant, thanks to the Merlot in the blend.
Smooths out those tannins.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget the right bank.
Of course not. Saint-Emilion and Pomerol, that's where Merlot really shines.
But Cabernet Sauvignon still plays a role.
Absolutely. Adds complexity and structure to the blends. They still have that Bordeaux character, but often with those intriguing truffle and dark fruit notes.
Now, one thing I've noticed is that Bordeaux is all about blending when it comes to Cabernet Sauvignon. Why is that?
It's the heart of Bordeaux winemaking, creating a harmonious whole where each grape variety contributes something special. Merlot softens, Cabernet Franc adds spice. It's about balance, complexity, crafting a wine that transcends the individual parts.
A true team effort.
Exactly. And that's where the skill of the Bordeaux winemakers really comes in. They're masters at blending, creating these nuanced, expressive wines.
And we can't forget the aging potential of these wines, right?
Absolutely. One of the hallmarks of a great Bordeaux, especially with a high percentage of Cabernet Sauvignon, is its ability to age gracefully for decades. Over time, they develop what are called tertiary aromas: leather, tobacco, earthiness, sometimes even mushroom notes.
Like a history lesson in every sip.
Exactly. But while we're on the topic of aging, I think it's time we shift gears and explore the other side of our Cabernet Sauvignon showdown: California. It's a different world, known for those bold, fruit-forward wines. It'll be interesting to see how it stacks up against the old-world elegance of Bordeaux.
I'm ready for the challenge. Let's see what California has to offer.
So California Cabernet Sauvignon, it's a different story than Bordeaux, that's for sure.
Definitely more of a New World vibe, right?
California's wine scene really started taking off in the mid-20th century. Before that, it was mostly about those simpler jug wines, but then came these pioneering winemakers with a vision. They want to make world-class wines, and they saw the potential of Cabernet Sauvignon.
I guess they proved everyone wrong, right? I mean, think about the 1976 Judgment of Paris. California wines beat out some of the top French wines in a blind tasting, and Cabernet Sauvignon was a big part of that.
It was a real turning point, a shake-up in the wine world. Put California on the map, and Cabernet Sauvignon, well, it became a symbol of their success.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate underdog story. But before we go any further, let's talk terroir for a second. How does California's compare to Bordeaux?
It's all about diversity in California. You got the cool, foggy coastline, the warm, sunny inland valleys.
Mm.
It's a huge state. And that diversity is reflected in the wines, especially Cabernet Sauvignon.
So there's no one-size-fits-all California Cabernet Sauvignon.
Not at all. Each region has its own personality.
Hmm.
Take Napa Valley, for instance. It's become synonymous with high-end Cabernet Sauvignon. Big, bold wines, ripe fruit, those classic vanilla and spice notes from aging in new American oak barrels.
Napa Cabernet definitely has that luxury wine image.
It does. But then you've got Sonoma County,
Mm.
and that's a perfect example of California's diversity.
Like,
Well, you have cooler spots, like the Russian River Valley. Cabernet Sauvignon there is more elegant, restrained, think brighter acidity, more focus on those red fruit flavors. And then you go over to Alexander Valley, things warm up, and the wines get richer, fuller bodied. They can rival Napa in terms of intensity.
wow, so many different expressions even within one state. What about Paso Robles? I keep hearing good things about their Cabernet Sauvignon.
Paso Robles is a rising star. They make Cabernet Sauvignon that offers amazing value. The climate's warm, sunny, perfect for ripening those grapes.
Hmm.
And the wines, well, they've got this bold, fruit-forward character, ripe black fruit, and just a touch of earthiness.
So there's a California Cabernet Sauvignon for everyone, basically.
Pretty much. Now, we talked about how blending is so central to Bordeaux winemaking.
Right. Merlot, Cabernet Franc, all playing their part.
Exactly. But California has a different philosophy.
Oh.
They love to showcase Cabernet Sauvignon as a single varietal. They're all about highlighting those inherent qualities.
Like what?
Rich fruit, structure, that ability to age. California winemakers use techniques that really emphasize the fruit character.
So less about blending and more about letting that Cabernet Sauvignon stand on its own?
You got it. Shorter maceration times to preserve that fresh fruitiness. And they often age the wines in new oak barrels, which adds those vanilla, spice, sometimes even chocolate or coffee notes.
I've always noticed that California Cabernet Sauvignons tend to have a bolder, more fruit-forward style compared to Bordeaux. Is that because of the climate?
It's definitely part of it. A lot of California wine regions have those warm, sunny days. The grapes get super ripe, so you get those intense fruit flavors. And then, of course, you've got the winemaking choices they make, like those shorter maceration times in the new oak. They all play a role.
It's interesting how these two regions have such different philosophies when it comes to the same grape. So Bordeaux is about restraint, elegance.
And California is about letting loose, celebrating those big, bold flavors.
Exactly. It's a fascinating contrast. Now, let's get practical here.
Sure.
Imagine I'm at a wine shop. Okay. I see a Bordeaux Cabernet Sauvignon and a California Cabernet Sauvignon, both staring back at me. How do I choose? What should I keep in mind?
It all comes down to what you enjoy in a wine. Ask yourself, what am I in the mood for? Am I craving something elegant, structured, with those classic Bordeaux notes?
Cassis, cedar, maybe a little tobacco.
Exactly. Or maybe I'm feeling those bolder, fruit-forward vibes, those ripe blackberries, plums, warm spices from oak aging. That's more of a California thing.
I love that you're emphasizing personal preference.
It's so important. Wine is all about exploration, finding what you like.
No right or wrong answers.
And don't be afraid to ask for recommendations at the wine shop. Tell them what you're looking for, the kind of food you might be pairing it with. They can help you navigate those choices.
Good advice. I'm definitely feeling more confident about my next Cabernet Sauvignon venture. Now, let's talk tasting.
Let's do it.
I'm excited to learn how to really appreciate those nuances.
It's all about engaging your senses, paying attention to the details.
Okay, yeah.
Trust me, it's easier than it sounds.
Okay, let's talk tasting. I have to admit, I get a little intimidated by the whole wine tasting thing.
I get it. All those swirling and sniffing.
It can feel a bit overwhelming. Like, am I doing this right?
Trust me, it's all about slowing down, using your senses, enjoying the experience. You can't really go wrong.
That's good to hear. So where do we start? How do we break this down?
First things first. Look at the wine. Hold your glass up to the light and check out the color.
Oh, like, is it deep red or more of a purplish color?
Exactly. Is it ruby? Garnet. The color can give you hints about the wine's age. Younger Cabernet Sauvignon tends to have those bright ruby tones. Older wines They start to take on those brickish garnet shades.
So a visual clue. That's interesting. What's next?
Time to swirl.
Ah, yes, the swirl. It always looks so fancy.
It's not just for show, though. Swirling helps to aerate the wine, which releases those aromas.
Okay, makes sense.
Then the best part. Stick your nose in the glass and take a deep breath. What do you smell?
I always struggle to describe wine smells.
It takes practice. But think about it this way. What kind of sensations are you getting? With Bordeaux Cabernet Sauvignon, you often find blackcurrant, cedar, maybe a hint of tobacco or leather, especially as it ages.
Especially if it's aged.
Yeah? And you might even get some earthy or mineral notes. Now, California Cabernet Sauvignon, that's where you get those big, ripe black fruit aromas. Think blackberries, plums, maybe even a touch of black cherry.
Sounds delicious.
You might also pick up on some vanilla, spice, even chocolate from the oak aging.
I see, I see. Though I have to admit, sometimes I just smell wine.
That's okay. Don't get too hung up on identifying every single aroma. The point is to notice what you're experiencing. Is it fruity, earthy, spicy, subtle, bold? Trust your nose.
I can do that. All right, on to the best part. Tasting. What am I looking for here?
Take a sip, but don't just swallow it right away. Let it sit on your tongue. Coat your palate. Really explore it. First, pay attention to the tannins.
Tannins. I always hear about those. What do they feel like?
They give you that drying sensation, that astringency, like a strong black tea. Tannins come from the great skins and seeds, and they're really important for the structure of Cabernet Sauvignon, especially its aging potential.
Okay, so tannins, got it. What else?
Acidity. Does the wine make your mouth water? That's acidity. It gives a wine freshness, vibrancy. Some wines have more of it, some less. And then pay attention to the finish. That's how long the flavor lingers after you swallow. A long finish is usually a sign of a well-made, complex wine.
Wow, there's so much to think about with just one sip.
It's amazing, right? And the more you taste, the easier it gets to pick up on these things. Take notes, compare wines, talk about what you're tasting with others.
It sounds like tasting is all about practice and being present in the moment.
Exactly. It's a sensory experience.
I'm excited to put all this into practice. Now, I know our listener is curious about food pairings. What goes well with Bordeaux and California Cabernet Sauvignon?
Pairing food and wine is all about finding harmony, right?
Yeah.
You want the flavors to work together.
Yeah, you don't want them to clash.
Exactly. For Bordeaux Cabernet Sauvignon, with its elegance and structure, classic pairings like roasted lamb, grilled steak, those hearty stews, they're always a win.
Because the tannins cut through the richness of the meat.
Exactly. And the wine's earthy notes work well with those savory flavors. Now, if you've got an older Bordeaux, consider something with earthy flavors like mushrooms or truffles. They're magical together.
I'm taking notes.
Now, California Cabernet Sauvignon, that's a different story. Bolder, more fruit-forward. You need pairings that can stand up to those robust tannins, those ripe fruit flavors.
I'm thinking something equally bold.
You got it. Grilled ribeye, barbecued meats, even a juicy burger with some gourmet toppings.
Perfect for a backyard barbecue.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to experiment with cheeses. Blue cheese, aged cheddar, even Gouda can be great with California Cabernet. They can handle those big tannins and really bring out the complexity.
This has been such a fun and informative deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about Cabernet Sauvignon.
It's been a pleasure talking about it.
And to our listener, I say this. Embrace the world of Cabernet Sauvignon. Explore all the different styles, experiment with pairings, and most importantly, enjoy the journey. Whether you prefer the elegance of Bordeaux or the boldness of California, there's a Cabernet Sauvignon out there waiting for you. Cheers to discovering new wines.